For more than 40 years, Jim Cooney has been a mining industry leader internationally and has made significant innovative contributions to the social and environmental performance of the mining world. His background as a philosopher, political scientist, and specialist in Chinese literature provided him with the intellectual framework to pioneer the application of sustainable development.
I thought I might end up working as a research scholar in the Asian Library at the campus of University of British Columbia, where I was based at the time. And then I saw a Cominco advertisement for an information analyst. And it looked intriguing. They wanted somebody that would do general research in libraries to answer questions that people that were doing strategic planning in the company might have. And basically they were looking for an outsider.
In 1976, Jim Cooney joined Cominco as a member of a strategic planning team with responsibilities for assessment of social and political risk.
It became very clear to me that mining companies are in some respects moral actors, and everything they do really has ethical consequences in terms of the impact on the environment or society in general or particular communities, and certainly the impact on the economy.
Tasked to research the relationship between mining companies and communities, his approach was to listen, learn, and engage with communities and non-governmental organizations, a substantial innovation at the time.
His ability to cut through a whole lot of the complexity and the real focal point of any particular discussion. That's his intellectual capacity, and it comes in part from his background, from his training, from his formation. Having acquired a very high level of skill in two quite complicated languages, English on the one side and Mandarin Chinese on the other.
My first assignment was to go to Tanzania, and that was to be my first in-country information gathering exercise in preparing country risk assessment studies.
With the appointment of John Wilson as CEO of Placer Dome in 1993, Cooney found himself working with an executive who shared an understanding that the industry had to change in order to survive the social and political pressures at the time. He was sent to Tanzania because of his unique perspectives.
A perspective that might be very different from the common wisdom that most business people picked up from their usual business contacts. So this again was where I was bringing sort of the outsider to the inside in the company.
Jim was inspired by the publication of Our Common Future, the 1987 report of the Brundtland Commission that formally introduced the world to the concept of sustainable development. In 1992, the United Nations convened the Conference on Environment and Development at Rio de Janeiro, known as the Earth Summit, and Jim was disappointed that there were no mining companies present.
That's when I really started paying attention to sustainable development, not so much as a vision that I would espouse initially, but a doctrine that was gaining force and was going to affect public policy in many arenas, particularly Canada.
Cooney took note that while NGOs and communities were embracing the language and philosophy, mining risked being left behind and adrift in a changing policy environment.
There was resistance to sustainable development when I first proposed it.
Jim began to focus on the challenge of getting mining and sustainable development onto the same page. As a result, in 1997, Placer Dome adopted a corporate sustainable development policy, amongst the first of its kind not only in the mining industry, but amongst all industries.
Because in order to get the environmental, the social, and the economic dimensions treated equally, you needed to have a process of decision-making that engaged the representatives of those three different dimensions equally.
He had figured things out. It became easy for the Placer Dome board to accept it and for it to enable us to become leaders.
Jim first used the term social license to operate at a meeting of the World Bank to explain the challenge of countering a new and rapidly rising form of political risk to the mining industry, the risk of conflict with host communities.
Jim's idea of social license to operate has gone viral, well beyond the industry. But his contribution is much more. It's not only his intellectual power that has made such a difference, but also his way of interacting with others, a way that is marked by respect, quiet diplomacy, and deep integrity. These are the characteristics of relationship building that are needed by mining if it is to succeed in today's world.
You look today just in Canada towards sustainable mining initiatives of the Mining Association of Canada, at the initiatives of the Prospectors and Developers Association, of the CIM's approaches to sustainable development mining. All the industry associations in Canada are aligned, and the International Council on Mining and Metals has made tremendous progress in developing guidelines for all sorts of areas such as relationships with Indigenous communities, respect for human rights, protection of biodiversity, and so forth. So the industry's come a long way.
Jim has worked tirelessly to ensure that the mining industry continues to evolve towards sustainable development and social license, including Indigenous license by obtaining free prior informed consent from Indigenous peoples. We are grateful for his contribution.
When Confucius was asked, what is the key issue, what's the key practice for good governance? And he says, use the right words. He says, if the words are not right, the discussion will not be productive. If the discussion is not productive, the decisions will not be effective, and affairs will not succeed.
We have to recognize that the work that Jim has accomplished to date has been very, very important, and it's to his credit that we are where we are today.
Placer Dome at that time, Henry Brejo was part of that management team. And there are various other people working with John Wilson as their CEO. They wanted to do this. They could see the benefit to be accrued from this. They hadn't seen it immediately. It was a learning process. They learned a lot of this together, but they had a guide who had the language and the foresight and the persistence to take them there. That was Jim.
Jim Cooney's visionary leadership and multidisciplinary background have left an indelible mark on the Canadian mining industry. His pioneering work in sustainable development and the popularization of the term social license to operate have revolutionized the industry's approach to social and environmental responsibility. Jim's legacy serves as a reminder of the importance of responsible mining practices and the impact that a single individual can have on an entire industry.